match preview. Tottenham,
Okay.
coming up in March week 31. So, what are you thinking about this game? It's
Uh,
of course London derby, and
yeah, it's a big game. I'd say it's a good chance for us to get some form going.
yeah,
I've had a look at like the next few games, and obviously we want to push for Champions League next year.
yeah,
So I think the next five games are going to be crucial, starting
yeah,
with Spurs, because
yeah,
then we go to Brentford, we
yeah,
have a match against Everton,
yeah,
we've got Ipswich as well. So I
yeah,
think I'm looking at these games, and if we are serious about making the top four, we have to win all of these matches. And I'd say Spurs will be tricky because there's going to be a London derby, but
absolutely.
considering the way they've played this season, I'm expecting us to get 3 points, especially because we're at home as well,
Hmm.
and they're in the bottom half of the league as well. So, you know, anything short of 3 points on Thursday is going to be a disappointment for
Yeah.
me, in the context of the season.
Yeah, you just made mention of bottom of the table, but considering the fact that Spurs has always been, a threat for Chelsea over the
Yeah,
time, and absolutely they are still is a London derby.
yeah,
So, do you really think being at the bottom of the table could maybe made any effect? And we really
you,
know this season that Spurs has really struggled a lot with a couple of
yeah.
injuries and all these things. And right now, I think most of the players are back into the squad, and
Yeah,
you know,
so Spurs are gonna have a strong team to
yes,
line up, and you're right, it is a London derby. So I wouldn't say underestimate them, but I feel if we can get a hold of the game really early, if we start bright, if we get an early goal, if we push, we stay stable at the back, then I think uh if as long as we make a good start to the game, we can play into the fact that Spurs haven't had a very good season,
yeah.
and we could play into the fact that, this we should go all the way and win the match, in my opinion.
Right. So, coming back from international break, I think Chelsea has got more couple of players, back to international break than Spurs, which
Yes.
shows that we are
Yeah.
much of in a better position than Spurs at the moment. But
Yeah.
are you seeing us taking this advantage? Because
You know,
yeah, yeah,
you know what? I'm glad we've got some players returning from the international break. On
yeah,
one hand, I'm glad to see that the players we had on international duty did so well. We
yeah.
had Reece James scored a
James,
free kick.
yeah, yeah,
That was incredible, and I think that will do him the world in terms of confidence.
yeah.
Uh, I think Enzo Fernandez,
Fernandes,
he always has a good international break. He played
yeah,
really well in the game against Brazil, and then we'll have like some of our key players returning, like Caicedo will be coming back. We'll
yeah.
have Cucurella in the defense.
Hmm.
I and then I think we have a lot of injuries returning
Yeah,
because
Madueke,
Madueke, Jackson,
Jackson,
you know,
Lavia is fit as well.
Lavia's fit. So I think
Yeah,
it's all going to be key, and all of these players are going to play a big part, because I'll be honest, I'd be a bit concerned
yeah,
if we didn't have the players that were on international duty, because
yeah.
I think the players that stayed behind, they weren't performing to the levels even in training.
Oh, yeah, because
There was
there was a rumor came out, but I just want to believe it's a rumor, but to be honest with you, it's heartbroken. 3-0 from under 21.
yeah,
It's just something that you don't wanna. It's something
exactly.
that puts like kind of a fear in your mind that what's going on, man.
Yeah,
you know,
the fact that if those players that stayed behind were lost 3-0 to the under 21s team,
yeah,
like it's a really pressing issue, which I think would be quite concerning. You know, how if we field those same players, how are we going to expect them to push for Champions League? How are we going to
Yeah,
expect for them to perform in the big games if they
yeah,
can't even do it against the youth team? So I'm hoping there's either the fact that it was a bit of a rumor or it was a bit of a, you know, um, like a short thing, and I hope it's just like a one-off where these players like Nkunku, Gusto, uh, all of these players that like stayed behind,
yeah,
you know, it was just like an attitude thing, like they took the game way too lightly, and maybe
yeah,
the young players just wanted a point to prove. Because
yeah.
if that's how they're going to perform in the team, then we've got like
Massive problem
problems.
in it.
Yeah. So
So let's talk about possible X side. What are you expecting from Maresca? Because when you look at kind of look at the squad at the moment, it looks like we are back and fit. We've got almost everybody on board.
yeah,
Everybody that is making the lineup week in week out. We've have them on
yeah.
board. So what are you kind
So
of expecting from the X side?
uh so this is going to be a really interesting XI, and
Mm,
I feel like for the first time in ages, we've had like quite a strong selection of players to pick from, especially because we've got the returning injuries. I think the
yeah,
injury list is looking very, very minimal now.
yeah,
Um, and it will be exciting to see how players like Lavia and Jackson and Madueke, they all get integrated back into the team.
yeah,
So if I was to start talking about the lineup, I'll start from the back, and I think in goal for me, it goes without saying that Jorgensen should be the one playing in the sticks.
yeah,
Especially in a derby. I saw the way Sanchez played against Arsenal, and I do not feel comfortable when he's in goal. He can pull off some good saves on his day, which
yeah.
is great. But I feel the way he plays from the back, it makes the whole defense shaky, and that's
It's
what we can't.
terrible. Yeah.
We can't have our centre backs being nervous on the ball when you've got players like Hummingson, you've got Solanke, you've got Madison, players that are going to
Kulisevsky and
Kulusevski as well, like players who are just going to attack the box. And if we have a nervous defense, we saw in the reverse fixture when we were at their stadium how they got the really good start and
Mhm.
they got like two really quick goals. And thankfully, the team was in good form and they were able to pull the comeback off there. But
Yeah, yeah,
I would feel really nervous if I saw Robert Sanchez as the first name on the team sheet because his overall presence, I think, and the way he plays,
mm,
invites pressure. I feel a bit more like stability, and I feel we're a bit more secure with Jorgensen in
yeah.
goal. But I also wouldn't put it past Maresca, and I wouldn't be shocked if I saw Sanchez's name on the team sheet because I think Maresca has openly come out and said that he prefers Sanchez because
Sanchez, yeah,
Sanchez sticks to the way he plays. Jorgensen likes to play long balls,
yeah,
which I think is better because it puts less pressure on our defense, but because that's not the way Maresca wants to play, I feel he will he does drop Jorgensen because of that. But again, if it was my lineup, I would go with Jorgensen in
yeah,
goal, and that's one thing I wouldn't budge on. And then I think as we come into the defense, we need something secure, something stable.
absolutely, yeah,
I think Cucurella has to 100% nail down that left back spot
yeah,
because he's a threat going forward. He can get a goal. He's solid at the back. When it's a London derby, you want players getting underneath people's skins, and
yeah,
when Spurs have players like Christian Romero and other players that are a bit like tough, a bit rowdy. There's going to be bookings in this game. There's going to
yeah,
be
absolutely,
challenges. If we can put Spurs on a bit of pressure, you know, force one of them to, get like a booking, get a dismissal, get a red card. I think
yeah,
Cucurella is that perfect player that can bring that sort of side to the game because he's got that nature. And I think one player that I would definitely want to see in the lineup, I'm a bit conflicted whether I would want to see him at centre back or whether I would just want to see him at right back because I'm not sure whether he'd be able to cope with the pace. But it would be Reece James. because Reece James had a good international break. It
Yeah,
would be good for him to get some form. He is the club captain at the end of the day. This is the
yeah,
perfect match for him to, come in and show what his leadership is all about. And then I think in the defense, Fofana needs to be in there because Fofana's like coming back from injury. It'll be
yeah,
good for him to get some minutes. He's like solid on the ball. And I'm a bit conflicted because I don't think Levi Colwill has been to the same levels as we saw at the start of the season. I
yeah,
think he's been a bit shaky recently, but I would maybe stick Levi Colwill in just for the Spurs game because on his day he is one of our better centre backs.
yeah, yeah,
But what I wouldn't want to see is a combination like a Levi Colwill and Badiashile
yeah,
because I think those
yeah,
two together, they're going to put a lot of pressure on each other, and that's just a recipe for disaster because
yeah,
players like Solanke, Kulusevski, they're going to put our defense on under a lot of pressure,
yeah.
and having those two at the back, I think, is
Doesn't
not a
works
good.
out. Yeah,
So I think Fofana it would be a good sign because he brings that stability to the defense. I also wouldn't be against having Reece James as a centre back if it's going to protect his legs, and having someone like a Gusto right back or a Achiampong right back. Um, but I think Reece James and Cucurella definitely are the first two names which I look at, and like 100% they have to be in the
yeah.
starting 11. There's no debate about that. Um, I'm also interested to see before I go into the midfield, like whether you agree with that, if you would make any changes, and what's your outlook in terms of the defense and
Right,
uh,
to be honest with you, the only problem that I've got with Maresca recently is,
y-
I've noticed he's so much interested in bringing Badiashile, into the
yeah,
squad. And that's what I'm really, really, really concerned about at this moment because I'll be fuming really hard. I mean, fuming if I could, you know, see the XI and Badiashile is there because he's a very slow defender.
yeah,
I'm not saying he's not a good player. Sometimes he can really be solid, but
yeah,
it's just that in this kind of a game where there's gonna be momentum, there's gonna be too much of pressure. You have Kulisevsky, you have Brendan Johnson, you've got Son to deal with, you've got
yeah,
Solanke to deal with. I don't wanna see a kind of a shaky defender. So
yeah,
I think the only person I don't want to see there is Badashio, to be honest. But
yeah.
trying to mix things up, I prefer to see Rhys James, to be honest, from the right back, Cucurella from the left back. But the two central defenders, I would say Fofana, to be honest, because to be honest with you, I can argue with anyone that Fofana is still our best defender this season. Having just played
Yeah,
14 games, but it convinced
yeah,
me a lot. The way he plays, the way he moves the ball, the way it's just like
absolutely.
it's just
I
like
th
a
I think
replica
I,
of Rodrigo. Yeah, the way he
yeah,
plays, he would. So
yeah,
I don't mind to see any kind of sort of combinations from the defense line. Maybe Fofana and Cowell. I don't mind. Maybe Fofana, Chaluba, maybe Fofana,
yeah.
Adarabioyo. I
Uh,
don't mind, but I just feel
I
like
I wouldn't mind seeing Chalobah in this game because
yeah,
I know Chalobah loves the passion of playing
yeah,
for Chelsea. He loves the passion of playing for the badge, and loves playing in Derby.
yeah,
And I think we need a lot of players in the squad today,
yeah,
or in the squad for Spurs, who will put on the shirt and will be proud to play for Chelsea, and
absolutely, yeah.
will bring that energy to the Derby. And I think
Hmm.
Chalobah is someone who I maybe had forgotten about, but as well in the same fixture last year, Chalobah, don't forget, scored a goal from the header.
Yeah,
So
yeah, scored a goal in
so
Stamford Bridge. Yeah,
so
yeah,
if I wouldn't be against the idea of having like Fofana or Chalobah, or Fofana or Colwill if you want like a bit more of that experience
yeah,
in the defense. But I think Fofana is also key because when we had that run. up till like the end of November, where we uh, got ourselves up to third in the league. I think
Yeah,
Fofana was key to that because Fofana
yeah, it
brought
was. Yeah,
a lot of stability to the defense.
yeah, it did. Yeah, and I mean, there's a statement came out from Joe Cole yesterday, and he was saying one of the biggest problem we've got this season, and I was so surprised that he mentioned that having Fofana going on injury is, I mean, the biggest, you know, problem that we've got this season, and I couldn't
Yeah.
believe until I tried to make some research and some analysis, put together some analysis, and I was like, wow. So
Y-
Fofana is just our best defender this season,
y-
So
You know what? I
yeah,
think that highlights a lot of the problems we face with the board and the transfers and the recruitment, because the fact that like Fofana's been the missing piece,
yeah,
and the lack of having Fofana due to injury has created the lack of stability in the defense.
yeah,
It's no new news that Fofana gets injured or he's injury prone. You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
we've since we signed him from Leicester, and I think even when he was at Leicester, he had some pretty big injuries as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
We've missed a huge chunk of that huge fee we paid for him. And
yeah,
you'd think by this season that the board would acknowledge that, and the fact that if Fofana has got a high risk of spending some time on the sidelines. Luckily, he hasn't spent as much time out as he has in previous seasons. But
yeah, yeah,
I think especially like we let Thiago Silva go last year, who was, a rock, and he was a legend at the back.
yeah,
He brought that stability, he brought that energy.
yeah,
Um, I'm surprised we haven't replaced that character because we brought in a lot of like young new centre backs,
yeah,
but the problem is they need time to mold and integrate. So I think that really highlights a problem with the board.
yeah,
The fact that we're heavily relying on Fofana to come back from injury and bring that stability to our defense.
yeah,
And if we do make Champions League football, which I hope we do, we definitely need someone that can supplement Fofana at the back
yeah,
and bring that support, bring that stability, and help these young guys as well, like get to those levels.
yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah,
Um, I think going into the midfield, I would definitely put Caicedo has to be on the team sheet.
yeah,
He's been a rock at the heart of our midfield. He's very good at covering defenses or mistakes our defense makes. He's very good at bringing the ball forward. He's just everywhere where you need him to be.
yeah,
He especially in a derby, he will throw his body on the line. He will make a good challenge. I think he's one of the first names that has to go on the team sheet, and I think because it's Spurs, I want to play it a bit safe and want to play it a bit more similar to um, what we've been playing in recent weeks. Because I think if we go with something completely different, that might put the team under pressure. So I would put Enzo alongside him for this game because Enzo is going to be a massive threat going forward, and he did
yeah.
get that important goal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Hmm.
But and then ahead of them, I would have Cole Palmer in this game because Cole Palmer is just that guy. He's the big game player. He is one of
Yeah,
the best talents in our squad, and you can't really drop him for a Spurs
yeah.
game. But I know um, his form recently has been a bit
Struggling. Yeah,
has been a bit shaky. I hope this will be a game for him to regain some of that confidence. Maybe he can get a goal, or if we get a penalty, he can like put one in the net. But in another idea I had, because we do have Lavia back in the squad, and I would be
yeah,
interested to see how this integrates, and having a look at how the international break went down. Enzo Fernandez had a really good game against Brazil, and when I looked at the highlights and when I looked at like Enzo's position in that game, he plays quite an advanced role for Argentina. He almost plays that center attacking midfield role where
yeah,
he can get in behind the strikers. He can play those those balls across. So I wouldn't be against the idea of dropping Palmer for a few of the games we have coming up
yeah,
against teams like Ipswich,
yeah,
teams like um, Everton, where you know, taking Palmer out the squad might be good for him to have that time to re-energize, rediscover his form. And if we have Lavia back, I think it would be interesting because I would put Caicedo and Lavia as the two holding
yeah,
midfielders, and I'd have Enzo advance up the pitch a bit because I feel that's where Enzo's real talent is. He's better going forward. We've seen that for Argentina. We've seen that throughout the season where he's got forward, he's got some really good assists, he's got some really good goals. So I wouldn't be against that idea, and I think having Lavia back is gonna it's gonna be very interesting to see what how creative we can get with our midfield. I wouldn't experiment with it with Spurs just because it is Spurs. It is a big game, you know. Uh, I think it's a bit risky because. Uh, in the reverse fixture, we started the first half by putting Caicedo at right back, which worked really good for one of the games against Aston
yeah,
Villa.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Spurs capitalized on that, and
yeah,
they put us under pressure within the first 20 minutes, and we went 2-0 down.
yeah,
So I don't want a repeat of that. I don't want us to try and figure a new system of playing, like maybe even at you know, half time or at, 60, 70 minutes, if we've got a 1 or 2 nil lead, Palmer's looking a bit shaky. He's not quite got the form that we saw at the beginning half of this season or last season. I wouldn't be against the idea of taking him off uh, for for someone like Lavia, allowing Enzo to advance up the pitch. Maybe we might see a bit more from him in terms of creativity, creating
yeah.
a bit more chances. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what lineups Maresca comes up with because we've obviously got more important like Conference League games coming up as well. So I think, you know, it will be a very interesting way to see what we do with our midfield. But for the Spurs game, I would stick with Enzo Caicedo and then Palmer right ahead.
Yeah, so before
Uh,
before you move forward to the to the striking part of the game, I totally agree with you with the second part of your analysis. To be honest, for me, I just want Maresca to we need to start learning how to play a game without Cole Palmer. I'm not
yeah,
practically saying that the fact that he's just coming back from injury, we don't have to rush him.
yeah,
We can approach games in a different with a different analysis. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, Tottenham game as another game that we can go there with another shape, another form of, a squad, having Casado and Lavia. To be honest, we don't know how much Lavia is fit at the moment because with the
yeah,
injuries and
yeah,
it's
of course.
concerning. You don't know. Sometimes the way his injury is progressing, you can't determine. I think the coach knows more better, but I would like to see on Thursday Casado Lavia just to put some much pressure
Yeah,
down from Tottenham. I just want to see these two guys from the CDM.
yeah.
That's gonna
I,
suppress a lot of pressure from Tottenham.
I,
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Lavia's
yeah,
key because Lavia brings a
yeah,
lot of stability to the midfield.
yeah,
He's very
yeah,
good defensively. Where before he got injured, we saw him in the game against Spurs. He was really
yeah,
good in the first half. He
yeah,
was like the shining light, even though we did go that start that game 2-0 down.
yeah,
And I think also had a really big game when we played Liverpool at the Bridge.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, he did we play Liverpool at the Bridge, or did we play them at
No,
Anfield?
we
I
played
can't
them
remember.
at Anfield. We played
We
them
played them.
1-1 at Anfield. Yeah,
We played them at Anfield, and considering Liverpool were the league
yeah,
the league leaders, and
yeah,
we got a point away at Anfield, I think
yeah.
that was a huge result in the
Huge,
context of our season.
and yeah,
And Lavia was crucial in that game because he brought that stability to
yeah,
the defense. Because when we have Enzo on the pitch, I think Enzo likes to naturally advance forward, and
mhm,
then teams can hit us on the counter. And I
yeah,
think further to your point, I as much as Cole Palmer is one of our best players in the squad, and it's a very hard decision to drop him because on his day, he is better than anyone in our squad.
yeah.
I don't.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I don't want us to be one of those teams that depend on Cole Palmer because we've
yeah,
seen that in recent weeks that Cole Palmer's been in a bit of a sticky bit of form and
yeah,
our goals have sort of dried up we
yeah,
don't know where the goals are coming from.
yeah,
And I want to bring that point uh, to a thing Mourinho said like quite a few seasons ago when he was still in charge with us, and Eden Hazard was one of our standout players. Mourinho made a good point that with the nature of the Premier League and how physical it is, a lot of teams would identify Hazard as a threat and would
yeah.
put, 3, 4 defenders
Four-man
on him
markings,
to
yeah,
like mark him out of the game.
yeah,
And I think that this season we've seen that a lot of teams have identified the same threat with Cole Palmer,
yeah,
and they put multiple defenders on him to like basically mark Palmer out of the game.
yeah,
And then we saw like before the international break that Palmer was actually suffering with a bit of an injury,
yeah,
and that's why he was missing from the Arsenal game.
yeah,
So I don't want us, in the lead up to the end of the season to heavily rely on Cole Palmer,
yeah,
because
yeah.
if we rely on Cole Palmer,
Yeah,
then
so
I, I
that's what I'm trying to capitalize on. That this is the right time to give him some rest. He's
yeah,
coming
exactly,
back from injuries. It's not ideal to put him, in that too much of pressure where people expect too much from him. As a player coming back from injury, we
yeah,
we can have
that,
him on the bench and we can try some other things. We can have
yeah,
Casado Lavia and let's see what Enzo can
yeah,
it's
exactly.
gonna be beautiful to see
Yeah,
what's gonna what
you know,
sort of things these guys can you
yeah,
don't know. Sometimes this might even bring a lot
it
of
might it might be a
options for
good
us.
it might be a good thing, and it's definitely a good thing having multiple options because I
Yeah,
want like Palmer to come back with a bit more motivation. Like, okay, look, the team are performing well even when I'm
yeah,
not in the squad. So I want like Palmer to look at it a bit like, okay, the pressure is not on my shoulders. So, I can come back into the squad and, play to the levels. And I think I was a little bit more disappointed in a player like Nkunku because I felt Nkunku really wanted that position behind the 10, and like that's where Nkunku thrives. And I thought with like Palmer's shaky form and Palmer needing a bit of rest, Nkunku would come into that position and throw a point to prove to Maresca, like, look, I'm available, I can play that position, and
yeah,
I can get the goals. And I was a bit disappointed that when Nkunku was given those sorts of opportunities, yes, we did play him up top a lot of the time. Yes, we did play him on the left wing where maybe he didn't want to be in those positions, but I didn't think I, I was a bit disappointed, like, with Nkunku that his attitude isn't there.
yeah.
But I hope in the coming weeks the whole team can like unite,
Together,
get a
yeah,
bit of a run going, and if we do need to drop Palmer to give him a bit of rest, if we do have like a Conference League game coming, or we do have like an important match where we need Palmer for the important game, I'd like to see a player like Enzo Fernandez take that role, or
yeah,
Nkunku reintegrate into the team where he can show a bit of that motivation where I want this position and I want to make this position my own, and I can prove to you because players like Jackson are coming back and he can go up top,
yeah.
like I can make this position my own. And I hope we see a bit more of that in the final stretch of the season.
Uh,
Uh, and I think it will be interesting because whatever we experiment now between now and the end of the season, I think it will build a good foundation for the Club World Cup,
yeah,
uh, and we
absolutely.
can see, like what different things we'll experiment because we'll be up against some big teams like Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Man
PSG and
City,
yeah,
PSG. Brazilian teams, you can't
yeah.
underestimate them
No,
because uh,
they're a very
this will
good
be a
side.
huge
Yeah,
yeah, that it will be a huge tournament for them. So I think some of the games we have coming up, like Ipswich, Brentford, these
everything
teams,
and
I want to see a bit more of experimentation and a
yeah,
bit more of like bold moves from Maresca, which I feel like he was making at the start of the season, and then he started playing it really safe. Uh, because we need like some sort of creativity, some sort of innovation so that we're not easily guessed and marked out the game.
Yeah. So let's go to the 4-3. What are your
Uh,
options for?
yeah, so I think, you know, what we what we've played all season, and I don't expect it to change, is the 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
And on the right, which I think is going to be really crucial, is having Madueke back. I think as much as people were annoyed with having Madueke at the right wing, because he can be a bit selfish at times, he can, he wants to do all the work himself. He wants to take a shot on, maybe sometimes the shot isn't on. But I think we need him in this game because we have having Madueke out with injury, we've now noticed the lack of not having Madueke in the squad. At the end of the day, he is a bit selfish. He does take on some shots, but at the end of the day, when he's been out, we haven't had one of those players taking on shots at goal. Uh, so I do want to see him back in the team. I think when this game is going to have a lot of counter-attacking football, so Madueke is one of those players that is just going to run at the defense. Um, and he's going to take a shot off. And look, at the end of the day, you're not going to score a goal unless you take a shot. So
Yeah.
other wingers, unfortunately, just haven't been doing it. Jadon Sancho has really been playing a lot of backward passes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have him in this game, even though he did score a goal at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah.
And what I would probably do, because uh, I'm not so confident on the left wing, but I would probably just stick Pedro Neto there because Pedro Neto, again, is one of those explosive players. He can hit you on the counter attack. He's got the pace, he's got the legs. And I think it's this game's going to be very end to end because Spurs are going to play a lot of counter attacking football.
Yeah.
So we need players with the pace. And to be honest, I just don't think Sancho suits the pace of this game because he's a bit more of bit more slower. He needs a bit more time on the ball. He hasn't got that electric pace. So the two wingers I would have is Neto and Madueke. And then I think up top it goes without saying because we've missed, even though he isn't the perfect number nine, we've missed having Nicholas Jackson up top. And I think Jackson's going to be huge to this
Yeah.
game. He's going to bring that presence. At the start of the season, there was a lot of good link ups between him and Cole Palmer.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see if having Jackson back in the team brings Cole Palmer back into a bit of form. And he makes some very good runs behind the lines. He will take some shots off, and I think we haven't really got much other option at the striker position. We can play Nkunku there, but Nkunku's really not a striker. He really hasn't shown the levels in recent weeks. So I would stick Jackson up top, and I think that's
Right.
going to be huge.
Yeah, to me, I feel like that was a very, very solid, you know, front three. Let me just put it in that way. But my concern is, having to start a player that's coming from injury is something that I'm really, really worried about.
Yeah, uh,
And I would probably go for Nicholas Jackson because we probably don't have quite options in the front line. But
yeah,
for Madueke, I'm kind of skeptical and thinking around it.
mhm,
Putting him in that kind of a big match, coming back from injury might be probably something that is not going to be good for him.
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if I'm seeing him on the bench. Starting Pedro Neto from the right flank, and I know Sancho has
absolutely.
not really been good lately, but to be honest, when you look at his performance in the first leg against Spurs, you'll be very, very
Yeah,
confused that he needs to start the game. But the
yeah,
fact is, the most solid, wingers that we've got at the moment is having Madueke, from the
yeah,
right flank, and of course Pedro Neto from the left flank, because these guys are serious. They want to make something happen. They're hungry all the
exa
time. But,
exactly.
but I'm just worried
You,
because I don't want a situation whereby Madueke is gonna
yeah.
come in and too much of pressure and probably go back to injury. I
Yeah,
just, yeah,
I agree with you there. I don't want to trigger any issues.
yeah,
When I said I don't want to see Sancho in this game, I don't mean it as if Sancho doesn't have a way back into the team. I'm
yeah,
more than happy for Sancho to play if he can show that he can run at the defenders as he was doing in the first half of the season. If he can take a shot off because we saw him score some big goals like he did against Spurs. So if
yeah,
if Sancho can bring that game. I wouldn't. I'd happily have him in the team. It's just his recent performances. He hasn't
Yeah,
been doing any of that, so I'd be a bit skeptical. Again, if we weren't to play Madueke because of the injury risks, I also wouldn't mind having someone like Tyreek George in the team because
yeah,
Tyreek George has, you know, shown really good glimpses when he's been given opportunities in the Conference League. You
yeah,
know, he's an academy boy, so he knows what it's like to, you know, have that passion, have that pride of putting on the badge for Chelsea. And
yeah,
I'd want like a young player like him to sort of take that initiative, show like this is what it means to play in a London derby, not I'm just getting paid a high paycheck
yeah, yeah,
and whatever happens is whatever happens. Um, Someone like Tyreek George as well, in coming seasons, he's going to be huge to us. He's going to want to break into the team. So I think a game like this could also be huge for someone
opportunity
like
for,
him.
yeah,
It could be a huge opportunity for him to, you know, come into the squad, prove what he's about, prove what he's capable of doing. But at the same time, I don't want him to feel the pressure
yeah,
of having to carry the team on his back or come in and,
yeah,
let's say he gets marked out of the game because he is still quite young, he's still a bit raw. I don't want that to shake his confidence going
yeah,
forward, because Spurs are strong at the back. They can put pressure,
yeah,
especially when it is a derby.
yeah,
Um, One other thing I thought of, and I'd be interested to see your thoughts on it because we definitely did see this last season. And if a player like Lavia is back in the midfield, and
yeah.
we have more license to see Enzo push forward, how would you feel about Cole Palmer shifting to the right wing, where we did see Cole Palmer play last season and Cole Palmer get some goals from? I think that could also be an option we could play with,
Yeah,
and see what that's like. Putting Palmer on the right, putting
yeah,
Enzo in that middle spot, having then like Pedro Neto on the left. If we're then like giving Madueke a bit of rest, like not throwing him in the deep end, not you know really pushing him as he's coming back from injury.
yeah, yeah.
And
Yesterday I managed to drop a video regarding some. I was just going through lineup builder, and I was trying to create something, for Chelsea future. I came to this lineup and I was putting Palmer on the left, on the right flank.
yeah,
But the reality is, to me, I feel like it's too late for this season. It's something we need to
yeah,
prepare ahead of next future. Because you see the way the player works sometimes, especially big players, sometimes it's difficult to move them away from what they are used to being doing. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Especially a player like Palmer, last season, he does his job perfectly well. No matter where you
yes,
want Palmer to play, he's a committed player. He plays his role perfectly. But I feel like it will be too much to put Palmer on the flank because he's played
yeah,
all the season from the number 10
yeah,
role. He's
true.
addicted to that role at the moment. He's used to that role, and I wouldn't like to see him on the flank for the rest of the season because to me that would be too much for him. Because
Yeah,
when you are on the flank, you are prone to a lot of tackles, and
yeah,
it's
true.
it's it's another ideology that you need to be used to. You need to be very
Yeah,
fast. You need to think straightforward. Compared to being at the middle. When you're in the middle, there's a lot of things you can do because you are rest assured that you can get fouls and all these things. But from the flank, there's a lot of things going on there. You need to be very fast. You need to. So to me, I think it's too late for him this season. But next season, I would see something like that because when you look at the structure of the amount of players that is coming back from loan, you don't want
yeah,
to miss out on this talent, especially Santos coming back next season. You
yeah,
don't want to miss out on that talent. You want to have either Casado, Lavia, and or Casado Santos absolutely in that midfield.
yeah. I,
And
I
you
think,
definitely want to see a player like Enzo Fernandez in the number 10 role. He has
yeah,
proven this a lot of times that he can deal with this role. And from
yes,
that role, he can score more goals, make more assists.
yeah.
So why wouldn't we do try to do
Yeah.
something like that next season,
You
And
know,
but the problem is, I keep thinking about it. You've got four right wingers, man. You've got Madueke, you've got Pedro Neto, you've got, if you want to push Palmer on the flank, you've got Palmer, and you've got
yeah,
Estavio coming in next season.
yeah.
And
We got S.
Estavio, to me, is not a player that you want to send back on the loan. You want to try
No.
and
Uh, uh,
integrate him into that team. And so,
yeah,
to me, it's something that is a little bit, skeptical.
yeah,
Depends on the coach, because if he makes a
yeah,
big decision to put Palmer on the flank next season, then
yeah,
it's gonna be a very, very competitive, thing for players like Madueke, Pedro Neto, and of course Estavio coming into the team.
yeah.
But I
But
think that's
you
gonna be the most solid, XI we're gonna have next season. If we can be rest assured to have Santos because we all know Santos is more or less
yeah,
like a free injury players. I believe he can go throughout the season without the injury. So
yeah.
you can have Casado available as well. So
Santos is a really key player, and I think he's
yeah,
going to be a key player for us next season,
yeah,
especially if we make Champions League, because we're
yeah.
going to need to have a lot more rotation
Rotation.
and
Yeah,
a lot more, depth if we do make Champions League, because that's going to be huge. There's going to be loads of big games.
yeah,
It's not quite going to be the Conference League where we can just play the kids against like lower level
yeah,
opposition. And I think Santos is having a really great season down at Strasbourg.
yeah,
Uh, we've seen that some really big teams are interested in him. We've
yeah.
seen the links Bayern Munich,
Bayern Munich. Yeah, they are very,
Bayern
very
Munich want
strong.
him.
Yeah,
So I think we can't afford at all to send Santos on loan next season.
again.
That's not an
Yeah,
option, and we need to find a way to integrate him into the
into the
team,
squad. Yeah,
because if we don't acknowledge his true value, he is gonna then start looking at teams like Bayern Munich,
yeah,
and if he will be great there. So I'm looking at the players we have on loan. I think Andre Santos is one of them that's going to be huge. I want to see Petrovic return, because Petrovic has
yeah.
also been really
Absolutely. Yeah,
good. And when he was playing for us in between the sticks, we had that stability. I
yeah,
felt confident when we had Petrovic in
yeah,
goal. Um, I think Esteval Willian is going to be huge. He's going to give us a bit more flair. I think he's going to provide us a lot of attacking depth. However, I don't want us to completely rely on him, because that's
yeah.
going to be a big switch from Brazilian football to the Premier League.
Premier League. Yeah,
It, where Premier League is a lot more physical, you got less time on the ball, things like that. So I don't want the pressure to be on him as soon as he walks in Cobham, because I've seen a lot of like people on X and people, saying like, "Oh, we've got Esteval coming in and he's gonna solve all of our problems." Well, no, you got to
no,
remember he is a teenager coming from
yeah,
Brazil. He's tearing it up in Brazil, but
yeah,
Brazil is not the same as the Premier League.
yeah,
So I'm not saying Esteval hasn't got the talent. We've seen he's definitely got the talent, but let's not rely on him, because
yeah,
just like we don't want to rely on Cole Palmer, I
yeah.
don't think it's
So
right for us.
that's what I'm trying to say. That it's gonna be a very, very big challenge on players like Estavio, Pedro Neto and Madueke. And if we have Palmer to shift on the flank, to me, I
Yeah,
think it's gonna be
we've
a
we've
very
we've
huge
also
challenge for these guys. And
we've also
Palmer is
got
another player that
Ben.
doesn't go on injury as well. So
Yeah,
it might probably be playing throughout the season. You don't. So I don't know what you are thinking about that, but it's a very
yeah,
big decision to make in terms of moving
yeah.
power to the flank. You need to consider
With,
this.
it's
Yeah,
it's going to be a huge decision to move Palmer to the planks, but I think one thing we've seen which has been quite interesting this season is there's been a lot of fight for that number 10 role.
yeah,
We've had players like Nkunku come out and say that's his preferred position.
yeah.
He wants to play that position. When João Felix was here, Felix really wanted
To
that
play
position
number 10
as
role. Yeah,
well. He
yeah,
wanted to play that number 10 role. We saw him do it in the Conference League. We saw him often shift out to the left wing. And then what's really interesting is Esteval. Willian has come out in interviews and his agents come out in interviews and said he's sort of been promised that number 10 role as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
how many players are we going to have fighting for that number 10 role this
yeah.
season? And we've already seen where it's been a bit of a problem. Players like Nkunku have been unhappy. Players like João Felix have been unhappy where they wanted that position. And rightly so, we've stuck with Palmer in the middle because out of all the options we've had, Palmer is definitely
Yeah,
is definitely the best. But I don't want more players to come in where they might have been given a false promise of that role,
yeah,
and in reality they might have to work for other positions as well, which I think there should be. I think every player should have that in their mind. Like, look, we should be a bit versatile. We should cover multiple positions because if we get guessed out of games, we can drift over to the left, we can provide extra cover, we can drift to the right, we can advance a bit more, create different options.
yeah.
But
With what you've just said, I think is one of the reason I think Quenda is gonna is gonna prevail. I mean, he's gonna have his time in Chelsea because when you look at the style of play, I think he can play from the right back as well.
yeah, I
So
think Quenda will
he's
be an
kind of a
interesting
flexible
one.
player.
But isn't Quenda meant to be on loan next season? Or
He's meant to come to Chelsea in 2026.
yeah,
So I
so I
mean, yeah, after next season, then he's
yeah
eligible to come to Chelsea. So, but
yeah
when you look at the analysis now, is another player that's joined them on the flank because this
yeah
boy has always playing from the flank as well.
yeah,
But for him, it's a different thing because I've seen him playing from the left back as well, which probably might be you know a very good backup for Cucurella. And we don't know,
yeah.
but I just feel like he's gonna find his way into the squad because he's a
I
kind of
th
a
I
player that can play from different. You know, I
You
mean,
know, I think Quenda's a huge player. I think he's an important player. He's been really good for Sporting.
yeah,
And I think it'll be interesting to see how we perform next season.
yeah,
And then when he arrives in 2026, I'll be interested to see how he integrates into the team. But it's good
yeah.
because one concern I've slightly had this season is and you slightly touched on this, is who's the backup for Cucurella?
Cucurella, yeah,
Because Cucurella has been solid. Cucurella has been a rock at the back. He's been there when we've needed to, and luckily he hasn't suffered with any injuries.
yeah.
But I would be really concerned if Cucurella had an injury because who do we then
Who's
have
gonna step
that's
up?
going to give cover? We had Renato Vega, who was giving that support at left back, and you know, he openly came out, and that's apparently why he went on loan, that he wanted to
Yeah,
play centre back and he didn't want to play left back. And, he's had a few okay games, he's had a few good games for Juventus where he's shown that he can play the centre back role quite well. But who is then giving the backup option to Cucurella? Because if Cucurella is injured, I think our
it's a
defence,
big problem. Yeah, yeah,
I wouldn't want to see that because
yeah.
that is a real concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we've had the XI, and to be honest, they are very very interesting. And I think if we stitch with what we've just said, we might be having a very good game tomorrow. So
Yeah.
let's quickly move into your expectation from the start of the game. What are you
Um,
expecting? What kind of
you
what
know
you
what?
know? Yeah,
I want us to start. It's not going to be easy, but I want us to start the game strong. I want us to showcase the attacking talent we have, and I want us to push forward. I want us to try at least to get an early goal. Again, it's Spurs, it's a London derby. It's not as easy as say like go grab a goal in the first 5 minutes. But what I
yeah.
don't want is what happened in the game we had earlier on this season where we
Yeah.
fall to the count
Fall short of two
to the
goals.
catch.
Yeah,
We fall behind to 2 goals. Spurs get that momentum. I don't want Spurs to get the first goal because if they get the first goal, they're going to lead with that momentum. They
yeah.
want they again. They may not be pushing for Europe in terms of like qualification for the top four or top five this season. They've dropped off quite a way, but they will want to end their season strongly as well.
Solid. Yeah,
Even though they are 14th, 15th, we can't underestimate the
yeah.
opposition. Similarly, when we play United in a few weeks, United haven't had the best of seasons, but they all want to turn up for the big games. They all want
Yeah.
something to show their fans that they can end the season on a high. So never underestimate the opposition. And Spurs are very good at counter-attacking football.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they've
yeah.
they've had their injury crises. It's not going to be easy attacking because they'll have players like Van de Ven and Romero at the back,
Back in the squad, yeah.
and they're going to be quite aggressive, and they're going to bring the fight to us. So I'd say my expectations from the start of the game is don't concede a silly early goal. Don't be shaky at the back. Don't play it around the back and invite the pressure for Solanke to come and uh, apply the pressure and put a goal in. You know, I want us to be doing that in Spurs' half, where we can force a mistake out of like one of their defenders. We can force a mistake out of Romero or
The
Udogi
dog, yeah,
or
yeah.
someone like that, and put pressure on them and get a goal early on. And I feel if we do get that early goal, if we do set the levels from minute one, we can then go ahead and win this game comfortably. Um, I don't expect us to make a clean sheet because our defense is as such, it's a London
You know,
derby.
yeah.
But I expect us at least to get a couple of goals. If I was giving a score prediction, I'd probably say either 2-1 Chelsea
Chelsea, yeah.
or 3-2 or I feel like there will be goals in this game. I
Yeah.
feel like there'll be a lot of counter-attacking football.
Mm.
Um, but I just want us to start strong because, we can't start on the back foot.
Right. So let's move to the last one and let me round it up.
Sure.
Jackson back into the squad tomorrow. I know. I mean, on Thursday. I know Maresca wouldn't have any option than to start Jackson on Thursday.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we know Jackson has a very good record against Tottenham. I
Yeah.
think he has scored more goals against Tottenham, if I'm not mistaken. I think his first hat trick for Chelsea was coming
Yeah,
against
yeah.
Spurs.
His
I
his
think,
first
yeah.
hat
So,
his
yeah.
hat trick
So, you
came
know,
against
what are you expecting from him tomorrow? What do you think he needs to
you
do
you
tomorrow, coming back from yeah,
you know what? I think we've definitely missed Jackson whilst he's been out injured, and the lack of him has been huge. There's definitely been that void, and a lot of people were complaining about having Jackson in, and I'm glad he's back. But again, I don't want to put the pressure on him because he is returning from injury. We don't want him to re-aggravate the injury. Again, we have to throw him into the squad because that's the position we've left ourselves in. We
yeah,
haven't got
yeah.
we don't have any reinforcement.
Options, yeah.
Our reinforcement was Mark Gu, and Mark Gu is still out injured.
Very, very hard.
Um, so uh, I I would love nothing more than Nicholas Jackson to get a goal against Spurs on Thursday. He scored his hat trick against Spurs. He got a goal when we played them at the Bridge. He's been crucial there, but I don't again want to rely on him, or I don't expect him to just come into the squad and like bang in like a goal or two. I feel um it would be great if he could get a goal, but I feel like his link-up play, the runs he will make, that will be what's beneficial to us because the runs he makes will draw defenders out of the game, and then that will free up the likes of Cole Palmer, Pedro Neto, people like that, and I'd say they have more likelihood of getting a goal in this match.
Right. Thank you very much, Dan. I'm so
Uh,
happy to have you here today on the match
uh,
preview. This was
th-
absolutely one of the best
thank,
analysis you can ever had.
thank you very much. It was a pleasure
Yeah.
to be
So so
on
happy
the
to
stream.
have. Yeah. So I hope we can
Yeah,
have more of this in
yeah,
coming
yeah.
future.
I
Yeah.
hope we can collaborate. I will
Yeah.
be at the second leg of the Legio match.
Lego. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully see you there. But in the
Yeah.
meantime,
Absolutely.
um,
100%.
I'm I'm grateful to be on the stream, and
Yeah.
it's been a lot of fun. So
Yeah.
absolutely, just hit me up anytime.
Yeah.
Uh, you need me on.
All right. Thank you very
All
much.
right, no
Have a
problem.
wonderful day, and
You too.
we hope to see you back anytime
Yeah,
soon.